The views and opinions expressed in this content are that of a continuously evolving nature and are subject to change as humanity evolves into higher states of awareness.
This is Lee from Realspiritdynamics, and in this video I'm going to talk about how we eventually transcend our physical desires and we become what's known in the spiritual communities as a sovereign being. And this is somebody who is able to live a kind of lifestyle where they are no longer reliant upon the need for physical desires such as other people or objects. And becoming a sovereign being is a very interesting and vital part of your spiritual journey. And this must be practiced and understood before we can advance into 5D consciousness. So almost all negative emotions are a direct result from fear. And fear is what creates the ego structure. And if we contemplate our biggest fears, they'll often take us back to one of the biggest fears of all, which is fear of abandonment. And if we go even deeper here, this fear will take us back to fear of being alone. And this is because during our evolutionary progression, being left alone at some point would have literally meant our death. And although this is not the case today, there's a lot of people who still have this old mindset. And what this does is it causes them to kind of attach themselves to physical desires such as people or objects. And what they'll do is they'll use their ego to manipulate their physical surroundings so that they feel safe. A good example to use here is the type of people who are constantly looking for a long-term relationship. And what they'll do is they'll look for somebody to complete them because they don't feel complete and they feel very alone. And what this does is it forces them to use their ego to kind of project a false image of themselves to that person, which is not their true self. It's actually what they want that other person to see them as. Now this is ultimately a selfish act on their behalf so that that person won't leave them. And this is because of their deep fear of abandonment. Another example of this would be the type of people who constantly post what they're doing every day on social media. And a lot of the times this is because of a deep fear that they will be forgotten about if they don't do this. And social media know about this as well. And they actually play on this. This is why they have so much power. And what's happening here is that people are using their mobile devices as a kind of fake sense of security. And they're getting stuck in this vicious cycle of feeling alone, looking at their social media and reading all the fake approval-seeking content that people are putting on there because of their fear of abandonment as well. And it's turning a lot of people into what I like to call phone zombies. And this is actually getting worse because you'll see this out in the field and you'll see two people, for instance, will walk into a coffee shop and sit down. One of those people will get up to order the drinks, and then the other person will often instantly pick up their phone and start looking at social media. This is because they're trying to avoid that instant feeling of abandonment when the other person leaves them. And although social media has its good points, this is one of the bad sides about social media that I think the world needs to be aware of before it gets out of control. Another example of this would come in the form of animal attachments. I do see a lot of people, especially here in England, where a lot of people won't literally go out for a walk in the park alone, and they're actually using their dogs and pets as an excuse to actually go out in the park. And if you said to these people, would you actually leave your dog at home and go for a walk in the park alone, they simply won't do this because they have a deep down fear of being alone. And a lot of people are actually using dogs as an excuse to actually go out. So what happens here is that when people have a lot of physical desires and attachments, this often leads to emotional distress because eventually a lot of these physical attachments are lost. And when this happens over a period of time, you're eventually forced into looking at this from a higher level of awareness. And when you do this, you'll realize that no matter what you're going to be attached to, it's never going to be there long term. So with this new realization, they kind of create a new relationship with themselves, and they realize that everything is internal, therefore eternal. And this is becoming a sovereign being. Now, this is only possible when you reach a level of awareness where you realize that everything is in fact internal. So even if somebody who you love is sitting next to you, you'll realize that the love itself is not actually being projected from them to you. The love itself is inside you and is ultimately created by yourself. So what this means is that even the thought of somebody being next to you can be the same as them actually physically being there. And this is because your mind and your emotions don't actually know the difference. And this internal realization will unlock new potential and actually change your life. Because what you'll realize is that with your imagination alone, you can then create the life of your dreams without that fear of loss or abandonment. And this is becoming a sovereign being, and this is a vital stage in your development towards 5D consciousness. And once you're at this stage, a lot of your fears will actually subside. Because what you'll realize is that what you can create internally can actually be more rewarding than what you can create externally. And the reason for this is because your imagination has no limits. You will then realize that any external relationship that you have after that has more of a chance of working, because what will happen is you'll kind of lose all of the unfair, unrealistic expectations you once had because of your ego. And there's a kind of paradox here, because in order for you to reach this level of awareness, you must have gone through physical attachment and then gone through a kind of dark night of the soul after losing that attachment, in order for you to generate this new level of awareness where you no longer need that attachment. So heartbreak is actually part of this process, and the universe will bring this to you over and over again until you realize this. And once you realize this, you will actually gain back your true power. And what I mean by true power is, this is the power that you once had before your ego destroyed it. And this is becoming a sovereign being. Now bear in mind here that this is just the basics of becoming a sovereign being, because this opens up a lot of new doors, and the universe will actually bring people to you on this level of awareness, which is going to help create unity when we move into 5D consciousness. And also this is linked with white magic, which is a more advanced form of spiritual awareness, which I will make a video about in the future. But that's about all I want to say today about becoming a sovereign being. And remember that this is not a quick process. It often involves a lot of life experience and negative emotions before you can reach this level of awareness. But if you are currently going through this process, or you are already a sovereign being, please leave a comment and help other people going through this process as well. And if you are into this content, please subscribe to my channel. And if you can, please support us on Patreon at Realspiritdynamics. And with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.